One day, on a gloomy autumn evening, three friends decided to go to a small cafe, about which there were rumors. It was located in an old abandoned mansion, buried in the shade of dense trees. Although everyone warned them against visiting this place, curiosity got the better of them. Climbing the creaking stairs, they found themselves in front of the massive wooden doors of the cafe. There was complete darkness behind them. But the friends could not resist the desire to plunge into the atmosphere of mystery and decided to enter. When they stepped on the threshold, they noticed that everything was not as they imagined behind the door. Instead of the usual cafe and pleasant atmosphere, a hall plunged into deep darkness opened in front of them. The only light source was located in the middle of the room, a large candle emitting an eerie pale light. Friends doubted, but their curiosity got the upper hand again. They carefully made their way through gloomy tables and chairs covered with dust and cobwebs. Every step caused the ominous creaking of the floors, as if the mansion came to life and accompanied them with its secret sounds. As they approached the table, they noticed that an old book was lying on it. It looked very old and worn out, as if it had passed through many generations. Deciding to see what was inside, they opened it and began to read. The pages of the book came to life before their eyes, and they plunged into a story that turned out to be much more terrifying than they could have imagined. Each page told about the terrible events that took place in this very cafe. A strange entity living inside the walls absorbed the souls of visitors, turning them into ghosts who now roamed this place forever. Horror gripped friends, and they decided to leave the cafe. But when they turned to leave, they found that the door they had come through had disappeared. The room became even darker. Their hearts were frozen with fear. Suddenly, ghosts began to appear out of the darkness, addressing friends with voices filled with despair and anguish. They realized that they had become prisoners of this terrible place, and that they would never be able to leave it. People who heard about the disappearance of friends began to beware of this mysterious cafe. They warned others about its dangers and horrors, but despite all the warnings, there were always brave souls ready to try their luck and get inside. One of these daredevils was a young guy named Maxim. He was known for his curiosity and thirst for adventure. When he heard about the legend of the cafe in the old mansion, his heart was filled with excitement. He decided to check the veracity of these stories and find out what was really going on inside. In the evening, when darkness enveloped the city, Maxim approached the abandoned mansion. He felt a tremor inside him, but nothing could stop him. He made his way through the dense shadows of the trees, heading for the old wooden doors. When Maxim went inside, he felt a chill permeating his bones. The darkness was so dense that he could barely make out the contours of the room. He took out a flashlight and turned it on to light his way. Maxim slowly moved through the gloomy tables and chairs, feeling how each step causes the ominous creaking of the floors. His every breath sounded louder in the silence. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him from the darkness. Soon Maxim noticed a table with a book, exactly the same as what his friends had seen. His heart beat faster, and he came closer. The book looked old and worn, as if it had swept through the centuries. Maxim couldn't resist the urge to open it and find out what it was hiding. He carefully opened the book and began to read. The pages came to life before his eyes, and he was immersed in a story full of horror and darkness. Each page told about the terrible events that took place in this cafe. He read about how ghosts roam his corridors, trying to find a way out of their eternal darkness. Maxim understood that he had become a part of this mystical story. He tried to close the book, but the pages kept turning over by themselves. He soon realized that he would not be able to leave this place now. He was condemned to eternal fermentation in the dark corridors of this cafe. And so the legend of the cafe in the old mansion continues. Those who dare to enter become prisoners of his mystical power, doomed to the fermentation of eternity. And only those who hear this story can make a choice. Take a chance and get inside or stay safe, but never find out what is really going on behind the door of this mysterious cafe. Once in a distant city, where everything was immersed in darkness and mystery, there lived a young guy named Alexander. He was known for his curiosity and passion for adventure. When he heard about the mysterious restaurant, which was known for its mystical atmosphere and terrible events, his heart was filled with excitement. He decided to try his luck and go to this mysterious restaurant. In the evening, when darkness enveloped the city, Alexander approached the old building where the restaurant was located. He felt a tremor inside him, but nothing could stop him. He opened the massive wooden doors and went inside. Upon entering, he felt a strange chill that penetrated through his bones. It was dark inside. Only the faint light from the candles illuminated the room. The walls were covered with dust and cobwebs, and the air was filled with the smell of rot and mystery. Alexander looked around and noticed that the restaurant was full of empty tables and chairs. Everything looked abandoned and forgotten. He felt the weight of the place fall on him, as if the souls of the deceased customers were still in this gloomy corner. He sat down at one of the tables and waited for someone to come to serve him, but no one appeared. Instead, he heard a low whisper that came from the darkness. The voices were indistinct, but they sounded ghostly and creepy. Alexander felt that he was surrounded by an invisible force. He tried to get up from the chair, but found that his body was motionless. He was trapped in this place, a prisoner of supernatural forces. Suddenly, the ghost of a waiter appeared out of the darkness. He was slowly approaching Alexander, his eyes full of lifeless rage. The waiter came up to the table and put a dish of black liquid in front of Alexander. "Taste," whispered the ghost. "This dish is from the darkest nightmares." Alexander refused to eat, but the ghost insisted. He brought the spoon to Alexander's mouth and forced him to open his mouth. The black liquid poured into his mouth, enveloping his taste buds with darkness and despair. At the same moment, Alexander felt his consciousness begin to sink into the abyss. He saw visions of terrifying events, heard the screams and groans of the lost souls. He was a prisoner of his own nightmares. Alexander, realizing that his life is now forever connected with this mysterious restaurant, decided not to give up. He knew that there were other forces in this world that could help him solve the mystery and free himself. He began exploring the city, talking to locals and looking for clues about the restaurant's past. He learned that many years ago there was a tragedy in this building, a fire in which many visitors died. Since then, the restaurant has become a place where the souls of the dead could not find peace. Alexander found an old sorcerer who lived in the vicinity of the city. He told him his story and asked for help. The sorcerer suggested that Alexander go through a series of tests to prove his willpower and purity of intentions. Alexander agreed and began to perform the tasks of the sorcerer. He walked through a maze of mirrors where every reflection tried to confuse his thoughts. Then he visited a room with falling ceilings, where he had to show speed and agility to avoid danger. The final test was to pass through the portal of nightmares, where Alexander faced his worst nightmares. But he did not let them master him, and continued to walk forward. Finally, after successfully passing all the tests, the sorcerer opened the way for Alexander to enter the restaurant. He warned him that even greater dangers await him there, and that only his willpower and determination will help him survive. Alexander entered the restaurant again. Now he was ready for what was waiting for him. He walked past the tables and chairs, which were still empty and abandoned. But this time, he no longer felt the heaviness and gloom of the place. He heard a familiar whisper, but now the voices were legible. They called him and offered him help. Alexander found the source of the whisper. It was the souls of the dead who still remained in the restaurant. He started talking to them, learning their stories, and helping them find peace. They told him about how they got into the restaurant and how they lived all these years without finding peace. Alexander realized that his mission was to help them free themselves. He used his knowledge and willpower to break the curse that held souls captive. He performed a ritual of liberation and allowed each soul to find its place in the afterlife. When the last soul was released, the restaurant began to fill with light. The dust and cobwebs disappeared, and the smell of rot disappeared with them. The restaurant has come to life with a new life. Alexander left the restaurant feeling liberated and victorious. He realized that his curiosity and passion for adventure helped him overcome the darkest forces and find true salvation. Since then, Alexander has become known in the city as a hero who freed the restaurant from evil. He continued his adventures, but now with a new understanding that sometimes even the darkest places can be illuminated with light and hope.